Hey, greetings, everyone. Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we wrapped up the World of Warcraft campaign-setting source material book for the role-playing game for Dungeons & Dragons, and we can start another one of those. We also read about, in Chronicles, how Varian Rin was abducted by Onyxia. And in Cycle of Hatred, we basically had some Alliance members say that they want to start getting reinforcements excuse me, to fight back against the orcs. So stay a while and listen as we continue Cycle of Hatred with Chapter 12. Not a lot more to say about that. Aegwynn really wished the annoying young woman would just go away. That wasn't going to happen, of course. Aegwynn was too much of a realist to think otherwise, but it didn't stop her from wishing it with all her heart. She had been alone for 2 decades and had come to appreciate being by herself. Indeed, she'd been happier these past 20 years than the hundreds of years prior to her exile to Kalimdor. She had truly hoped that these highlands, surrounded as they were by impassable mountains, were remote enough and that the wards were low-level enough that no one would find her. In retrospect, that was a forlorn hope. I can't believe you're still alive. This Proudmoore woman sounded like a teenager. Aegwynn knew it wasn't her standard mode, only because she had modulated into it upon learning who Aegwynn was. Proudmoore went on. You've always been one of my heroes. When I was an apprentice, I studied the records of your deeds. You are the greatest of the Guardians. Shuddering at the thought of what those doddering old fools at the Violet Citadel would have written about her, Aegwynn said, Hardly. Unable to stand this anymore, she lifted the bucket of water and headed back to the hut. If she was lucky, Proudmoore would leave her be. But Aegwynn wasn't particularly lucky today. Proudmoore followed her. It was because of you that I was able to become a wizard. Reason enough for me to be sorry I became one, Aegwynn muttered. I don't understand. Why are you here? Why haven't you told anyone you're still alive? Honestly, we could have used your help against the burning. Dropping the bucket to the ground, Aegwynn whirled on Proudmoore. I am here for my own reasons, and they are not yours now. Now leave me in peace. Unfortunately, all this served to do was cause Proudmoore to drop the teenager effect and go back to being the leader she apparently was. I'm afraid I can't do that, Magna. You're too important to... I'm not important to anything. Don't you understand, you stupid little girl? I'm not fit for human company, or orc company, troll company, dwarf company, you name it. That got the infants back up. Aegwynn could see the magic roiling within her and realized that, child though she may be, she was quite powerful. She had gotten through the wards without Aegwynn's even noticing, after all, and that bespoke a certain skill. I'm not a little girl. I'm a wizard of the Kirin Tor. I'm 1,000 years old, so as far as I'm concerned, you've got a few centuries to go before I might consider calling you something other than a little girl. Little girl. Now go away. I just want to be left alone. Why? Proudmoore sounded genuinely confused, which led Aegwynn to think that the young wizard hadn't really read her history, or had been so thoroughly bowdlerized by the time Proudmoore got to it. The girl continued. You were the one who blazed the trail for women to become wizards. You're one of the unsung heroes of Azeroth. How can you turn your back like this? Aegwynn turned and walked into the house, abandoning the bucket. She'd get it later. Naturally, Proudmoore didn't give up, but followed her through the rickety wooden door. Magna, you're... Now standing in what she jokingly called the sitting room, it was the only room in the hut, so it served as bedroom, kitchen, and dining room as well, she cried, Stop calling me that! I'm not a mage anymore. I'm not a hero at all, and I don't want you in my house. You say that I blaze the trail for women to become mages. If anything, I'm the best reason why women should never become mages. You're wrong, Proudmoore said. It's because of you. Putting her hands to her ears, Aegwynn said, For the love of all that is holy in this world, will you please stop that? Quietly, Proudmoore said, I'm not saying anything you shouldn't already be aware of. If not for your work, the demons would have come much sooner, and we... And what difference did that make exactly? Aegwynn sneered at the girl. The demons still came, and Lordran was still destroyed. The Lich King still reigns, and Sargeras still won. Proudmoore winced at the mention of the Lich King for some reason, but Aegwynn didn't really care enough to inquire why. Then the girl said, "You can deny your accomplishments all you wish, but it changes nothing. You are an inspiration to all," she smiled. "To all the little girls who wanted to grow up to become mages. At the Citadel, my favourite story was always the one about how you were chosen to be the first female guardian by Scavel, who was the first mage to see the value of a female apprentice, and how the guardians of Tirisfal applauded the choice, and..." Aegwynn couldn't help it. She laughed. She laughed long, and she laughed hard. In fact, she was having trouble breathing, she was laughing so hard. She started coughing, but managed to get it under control after a moment. Her body was finally, after a millennium, starting to age and break down, but she still had some vitality left, and she wouldn't be rendered helpless by a fit of laughter. It was, however, the best laugh she'd had in centuries. Proudmoore looked like someone had fed her a lemon. Her face was so sour. "I failed to see what's so amusing." "Of course not," Aegwynn chuckled and took a few deep breaths. "If you believe that garbage, you wouldn't." A final breath which turned into a sigh. "Since you insist on invading my privacy, Lady Jaina Proudmoore of the oh-so-noble city of Theramore, then have a seat." She indicated the straw chair that she had spent the third year of her exile in this place putting together, but then refused to ever sit in. "I will tell you the real story of how I became a guardian of Tirisfal. Why, I am the last person you should consider to be any kind of hero." 847 years ago. For the first time in years, the Tirisfal Glades frightened Aegwynn. The forest that lay just north of the capital of Lordran had always been a place of beauty and of quiet, away from the hustle and the bustle. Her mother had first taken her here on a camping trip when she was a girl. Little Aegwynn had found it to be frightening and fascinating all at the same time. She had been surprised at the animals ranging freely, stunned by the incredible colors of the vegetation, and amazed at how many stars she could see in the night sky away from the torchlight and lanterns of the city. Over time, the fear fell away, replaced by joy and wonder, and at times relief. Until today. Today, the fear was back in full force. Sorry guys, my dog's having this little post-breakfast run around. She had been apprenticed to the wizard Scavel since before puberty, working alongside 4 others, all boys, of course. Aegwynn had always wanted to be a mage, but had been told repeatedly by her parents that she would grow up to become someone's wife, and that was all there was to it, and her dallying about with herbs and such was fine for now, but soon she'd need to learn more important skills like sewing and cooking. This assurance lasted right up until she met Scavel, and he invited her to become an apprentice, making it clear that he wouldn't accept no for an answer. Her parents both wept openly that they were losing their little girl, but Aegwynn was thrilled. She was studying to become a mage. Back then, there were only 3 other apprentices, Falric, Jonas, and Manfred, who were as irritating as every other boy Aegwynn had known, but a little more tolerable. The 4th, Natael, came a year later. Today, Scavel announced that he was a member of a secret order known as the Guardians of Tirisfal. Aegwynn's first thought was that the forest she loved was named after them, but it turned out to be the other way around. They called themselves that because they met in those glades and had for many centuries. It surprised Aegwynn, as she had never seen any of these meetings, despite making regular trips to the glades for years. Then Scavel said they were going to the glades to meet the Tirisfallen. The boys went on about secret societies and how amazing that was, like it was some kind of adventure, but Aegwynn didn't participate. She wanted to know what exactly this Tirisfallen was. Scavel was vague on the subject. Where the boys were content to trust Scavel's word, Aegwynn wanted to know more. "You'll see soon enough, my girl," Scavel had said in response to her question. He always called her my girl. When Scavel brought them out to the glade, Aegwynn was confused, for there was no one in the clearing they stood in. Then moments later, just as she was about to ask Scavel what was going on, there was a flash of light, and she found herself, Scavel, and her fellow apprentices surrounded by 7 people standing in a perfect circle around them. 3 of them were human, 3 were elves, and 1 was a gnome. All of them were male. "We have chosen," one of the elves said. Falric asked, "Chosen what?" The gnome said, "Be silent, boy, you'll find out soon enough. Turning to Scavel, the elf said, You have trained all 5 of your students well, Magnus Scavel. Aegwynn frowned. She'd never heard that honorific before. However, there is one student that has stood out from the others. One student who has proven inquisitive in the ways of magic beyond ordinary curiosity, who has shown aptitude for spellcasting that is unparalleled, and who has already mastered the Mitre Scrolls. Now Aegwynn's heart raced. The Night Elf Mitre was a great wizard from many thousands of years ago. Elven mages didn't attempt to cast from Mitre Scrolls until the final year of their apprenticeships, and human mages often didn't even try until after their apprenticeship was completed. Aegwynn, however, was casting Mitre spells at will by the end of her first year. She had also been doing so in secret. Scavel insisted that it would annoy the boys. Falric looked at his fellow apprentices in turn. Who was casting Mitre spells? Grinning, Aegwynn said triumphantly, I was. Who said you could do that? Manfred asked angrily. Speaking in his papery voice, Scavel said, I did, young Manfred. And you and Falric would be wise not to speak out of turn again. Bowing their heads, Falric and Manfred both said, Yes, sir. The elf went on. What you must now be told, all of you, is that there is a war being fought. It is not known to the general populace, only to the community of wizards, of which all of you will someday soon be a part. Demons have invaded our world, and they grow more aggressive with each passing year, despite our best efforts to stymie them. Indeed, the gnome put in, earning him a mild glare from the elf. Likely because of those efforts, which serve only to anger them. Demons? The tale sounded scary. He'd always had a fear of demons. Yes, one of the humans said, at every turn they try to destroy us. Only the wizards can stand against them. The Tirith Fallen, the elf added with a glance at the human that indicated that he didn't appreciate this interruption either, have been charged with protecting this world from demon kind, and we have created a guardian. The finest young mages in the land are brought together by the current guardian, your master Scavel in this case, who trains them. We then determine which is the most qualified to become the new guardian. The choice wasn't easy, the gnome said. Jonas muttered, It'd be a stupid choice. What did you say, young man? Another elf asked. I said the choice be stupid. Aegwynn's a girl. She'd be fit for a wise woman, giving out herbal remedies to the villagers or somewhat. But that be all. We all of us be mages. Aegwynn looked in shock and disgust at Jonas. She had grown rather fond of Jonas, and the two of them had slept together a couple of times. They had kept their liaison secret from the other apprentices, though Scavel knew about it. There was nothing that escaped the old mage's gaze. The last thing she had expected were those words from his lips. Falric's, maybe. He was a pompous ass, but not Jonas. And Aegwynn swore to herself that Jonas would never get in her bed again. It is true, an older human said with a sigh, that women are emotional and prone to excessive displays that are unbecoming of a mage. But it is also true that Aegwynn has the most potential of any of the youths that Scavel has found, and we cannot afford for the Guardian to be anything less than the best, even if that means giving the position to a girl. At that, Aegwynn bristled. With respect, good sirs, I will be as good a mage as any of these boys. In fact, I think I will be better, because I had to overcome so much more to get here. The elf chuckled. She raises a fine point. So, wait a sec, Matil said. You mean that she's going to be this, what do you call, guardian thing? And we get what? Nothing. Not at all, the elf said. You will each have important roles to play. As the wizards of our order are fighting this battle, it is simply that the guardian's role is the most important. Turning to her mentor, Aegwynn asked, Scavel, what of you? Why are you giving up being guardian? Scavel smiled. I am old, my girl, and very tired. Fighting the hordes of demonkind is a game for the young. I wish to live out my few remaining years preparing the next generation. Turn to the boys. Rest assured, I will continue to be your mentor. Swell, Thalic muttered. All 4 boys were sulking. If anything, the gnome said testily, the fact that you're being so immature about this is precisely why we chose Aegwynn over you. Besides, the older human added, the Guardian must be the vessel of the Council. I suspect that a girl will be less willful and will understand the chain of command, as it were. This isn't a military engagement, one of the other humans said. Aegwynn couldn't help herself. You described this as a war. Quite right, the elf said with a small chuckle. Then he looked right at Aegwynn with eyes that seemed to bore into her very soul. You still have some preparations to undergo, girl, before you must undergo the transfer of power. The magic of all the Tirsfallen will be granted to you. Understand this, Aegwynn. You are taking on the gravest responsibility any mage can accept. I understand, Aegwynn said, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. But she wanted to be a mage more than anything else, and she knew that the primary responsibility of any wizard was to keep the world safe. At its best, magic was used by wizards to bring order to a chaotic world, and Aegwynn knew that that would be a lot of work. She just hadn't realized how much work, or what Skevel's real motives for showing her Mitre scrolls were. Falric stepped forward. Damn it, I'm as good as any girl, better even. I can even cast one of Mitre's spells. Watch! Falric closed his eyes, then opened them again and stared at a rock that was jutting up from the ground right in front of where the elf stood. He muttered an incantation, then repeated it. Mitre's spells all required double incantations, which Skevel had said was a security precaution. A flash of light in the rock glowed faintly with a yellowish hue. Falric sneered at Aegwynn and then grinned at the mages that surrounded them. Rock to gold, the gnome said. How unoriginal. Actually, the elf said with a smile, it is fool's gold. Falric's grin fell. What? It can't be. He cast a quick identification spell and his face fell even farther. Damn it! You have a great deal to learn, the elf said, but you have much potential, all of you. Falric, Manfred, Jonas, Natail, you will find that potential as Skevel's students. Again the soul-boring gaze. Aegwynn, your destiny will come quite a bit sooner. We will reconvene in this glade in a month's time for the transfer of power. There is much you have to prepare for. With that, all the counselors disappeared in a flash of light. A month later, having taught Aegwynn about the legions of demons and their horrific minions that had been trying and, through the grace of guardians like Skevel, failing to encroach upon the world, Skevel passed on the power of the Guardian to Aegwynn. It was like nothing she'd ever experienced before. Spells that once took all her concentration now required only the briefest of thoughts. Her perceptions changed as well as she saw far beneath the surface of everything. Where it once took an effort or a complex spell to determine the nature of a plant or the emotional state of an animal, she could now divine it at the merest glance. A year after that, Skevel died quietly in his sleep. When he realized he was dying, he had arranged to find new mages for Jonas, Natail, and Manfred to study under. Falric at that point was ready to be out on his own. Skevel willed all his belongings, as well as his servants, to Aegwynn. Less than a month after Skevel's death, Aegwynn returned from the small village of Jortis in time to receive a mystical summons from the council. As soon as she arrived at Tirsful Glade, the gnome, whose name she had since learned was Urbag, said, What do you think you are doing in Jortis? Saving them from Smodlor? Aegwynn would have thought that her answer was self-evident. And did you think to learn more about Smodlor before you destroyed him? Did you plan a strategy that would dispose of him in a manner that would contain him without the populace of Jortis learning the truth? Or did you just blindly charge in and flail about, hoping you might succeed? Fatigue and irritation combined to make Aegwynn a bit more forthright than she truly should have been with the council. None of those, Urbag, as you well know. There was no time to plan such a strategy or learn more. Doing so would have endangered the children in the schoolhouse that Smodlor had taken possession of. There were children in there. Was I to hang back and... What you are to do, Urbag said. As you were told. Did Skevel not teach you in the ways of the Tirsfallen? We proceed with caution. And with... Aegwynn interrupted the gnome right back. What you do, Urbag, is react. And that's all you do. And it's why you've made so little headway against these foul creatures over the last several centuries. Smodlor was able to take over an entire schoolhouse and was prepared to use the children of Jortis for a ritual that would have poisoned their souls. It was only purest chance that I detected the foul stench of demon magic and was able to arrive in time. Your methods are reactive. Of course they are. Urbag was waving his arms back and forth now. This council was created to react to the threat of the... And it hasn't worked. If we are truly to stand firm against these monsters who would invade and destroy our homes, we cannot allow them to encroach upon us so easily that they capture children before we even know they're here. We must be proactive in seeking them out and eliminating them, or we will be overrun. Urbag was not convinced. And when the people start to realize that their lives are in danger, they panic uncontrollably. Rather than reply to the question, Aegwynn looked at the other counselors. Does Urbag speak for you all, or is he simply the loudest? The oldest of the elves on the council, Relfthra, favored Aegwynn with a small smile. Both in fact, Magna. Both in fact, Magna. The smile fell. Urbag is correct in that you are too reckless. Smoldor was a minor demon in the service of Sargeras. He might have been able to provide us with useful intelligence about his master. Yes, and he might have killed all those children before providing us with that intelligence. Perhaps, but that is a risk that sometimes we must take in order to fight this war. Aegwynn was aghast. We are talking about the lives of children. Besides which, this isn't a war, it's a holding action at best, and it will get us all killed, child and adult alike, if we're not careful. Before any of the other mages could criticize her, she said, August mages of the council, with all respect, I beg you. I'm exhausted and wish to sleep. Is there anything else? Relfthra's face darkened. Remember your place, Magna Aegwynn. You are the guardian, but you serve that function as the arm of the Council of Tirisfal. Never forget that. I doubt that you will ever allow me to, Aegwynn muttered. If that is all, for now, Relfthra said. The words were barely out of his mouth when Aegwynn teleported back to the Violet Citadel in desperate need of sleep. I feel like that chapter, I mean, it's interesting to see this history. That's cool. But that chapter definitely, like, jumped it up in terms of, like, adult topics and language. Boom, out of nowhere almost. All right, thank you so much for watching and listening to me and the pup in the background. This episode, In the Pipe, 5x5.